Hello and welcome back to my channel for another Doctor Who Series 13 video. Today I'm going to be breaking down the recently released teaser trailer for Series 13, and it's going to be a breakdown in the truest sense. I've taken every single shot from the trailer, all 22 of them as you can see here, and I'm going to be going through them one by one in order, going through everything you might have missed, what stories they could be from, what's going on in these shots, what the context might be, and just generally talking about everything we can possibly glean from the trailer based on what we know about the series so far. So first up we have this shot of the Doctor walking to camera in a sort of white void. It could be some sort of void or could be a cloudy place, maybe a planet or somewhere on Earth I guess. It's quite a stylised shot with her sort of walking forwards into focus, looking straight at the camera. It makes you wonder maybe whether this is a point of view shot for another character, maybe another monster. Some people have said it could be a weeping angel, although she does actually blink. You can just see when she's walking forwards, so I don't think that could quite work. But nevertheless, it leaves a lot of questions about the context of this shot. Why is the Doctor looking straight at us? It's very rare for this to happen in the show. The next shot is very similar in a lot of respects. Again, it's one that could almost have been specifically designed for the trailer. It's hard to imagine what the context will be in the episode itself. We get the Doctor in this very ambiguous space, a sort of blue, purpley void with bits and pieces of rubble or whatever floating about the place. And then she turns quite dramatically to face some other character, we presume, possibly some nemesis, some monster, someone she's meeting up with perhaps, or someone who has summoned her to this location. Personally, it reminded me a lot of the Doctor's meetings with Time Lord characters in the classic series. Things like the start of Terror of the Autons, where the third Doctor meets that Time Lord who instructs him about the Master arriving on Earth, or the start of Genesis of the Daleks, where the fourth Doctor meets up with that Time Lord and he instructs him about the mission to go back in time and defeat the Daleks. I don't know, there's just something about the vibe here which sort of suggests to me some quite important meeting between the Doctor and another character. Of course, it could be someone like the Master as well, perhaps, maybe the Doctor is surveying this space, the destruction caused by the Master or something like on Gallifrey, and then she kind of turns back and that look on her face is to sort of say, my God, what have you done? The next shot, showing us our first glimpse of new character Vinda, played by Jacob Anderson, is also quite interesting because if you look very closely in the background at those walls, they match the walls behind John Bishop in that very first promotional image of Dan released way back on New Year's Day. But what is this location, and what is Vinda doing there? Well, to me it looks like some sort of underground tunnel system, or caves or something like that, with these big, tall, man-made beams and the walls, obviously, which look to be made of stone that's sort of been held back artificially by wire or whatever, and the lights as well, sort of beaming down into what is quite a dark space. I wondered whether the triangular shape of the lights is important. Perhaps it corresponds to the triangular symbols on Vinda's uniform. Could this be his home planet, his home environment? Who knows? Then we get this shot of the Doctor looking up at something which is presumably hovering in the air and she's reaching out to touch it. Could it be the robots that are glimpsed in just a second, or some other flying creature or hovering creature? Or could it be a force field of some description? Ionic membrane, dare I say, from Orphan 55? Could it be something like that where the Doctor is reaching out to sort of just touch and just test and see whether her hand can make it through this surface of whatever the hell it is? And then we have these trees in the background. You might almost call them Petrified Trees, which evokes Skaro, obviously, from the classic series, in particular from the very first Dalek story. I'm not saying it is that, but that's sort of my first thought. I mean, it could just be some sort of alien planet. There does seem to be an unusual, abnormal, excessive amount of trees in this landscape. So perhaps that's relevant, perhaps not. But that seems to suggest some sort of otherworldly aspect to this location, whatever it may be. Next, we get those flying robots. I think some fans have dubbed them the Scissor Robots due to the way that those appendages attached to them on the front sort of move up and down. Yeah, they look quite deadly, quite nasty, obviously. And interestingly, they're the only monster glimpsed in the trailer. I don't really have that much to say about them, to be honest. I think actually the thing that strikes me in this shot is the background, which is gorgeous and reminds me a lot of the sort of matte paintings used in the show before, especially in the classic series, when we've been to alien planets or in model shots or whatever, and the landscape has been painted and then superimposed in the shot or the set. I don't suppose that will have been intentional on the part of the CGI people working on the show, but it's a nice touch nevertheless. We get our first glimpse of the Tardis in Series 13 next, with some strange augmentation on one of the pillars to the left of frame, various wires running out of one part of the pillar into another, and then other ones leading somewhere onto the floor, perhaps the console. The fact that it's on this pillar on the left but not on the one to the right of frame by Yaz suggests that perhaps it is just a one-off device deployed by the Doctor specifically for one adventure, specifically for a certain task, as opposed to being a sort of permanent change to the TARDIS set itself, though I suppose it could be that as well. We can't rule that out, of course. Having seen the TARDIS interior, we then see the TARDIS exterior in flight in the time vortex. A beautiful shot of this time vortex. As ever, it just looks absolutely stunning. It's been suggested by some people that the orange light towards the end of this shot, to the right of frame, suggests that we're going to go back to Gallifrey, because when the 13th Doctor went to Gallifrey in Spyfall Part 2, famously, we saw the TARDIS fly out of the main time vortex and go into another orange-tinted part, which presumably represents the bubble universe that Gallifrey is in these days. There could be something in that, or it could just be a case of that same shot from Spyfall being reused again in the trailer just because it looks nice. The next shot is fairly self-explanatory. The Doctor says, "I'm the Doctor, this is Yaz, this is Dan," introducing the new team for this series. The setting looks to be the battlefield from the Crimean War, which was glimpsed in filming way back in, November last year. So perhaps this is from that story and the Doctor is introducing herself and her friends to a bunch of Crimean War soldiers. Next, we see Dan by himself at night, presumably from his first episode, presumably in Liverpool, or at least Cardiff doubling as Liverpool, and saying no way. So what has he seen? Has he seen the TARDIS? Has he seen the Sontarans? Has he seen, something else entirely? This next shot is quite interesting because the costumes worn by Yaz and then lastly Dan as he falls into the space in a fairly slapstick fashion, let's face it, they match those worn by Yaz and Dan in the filming at Liverpool's St George's Hall with Kevin McNally. At the time, the rumours were perhaps that there was going to be a suffragette-themed story. Now I think, based on this, it seems that we are still going to be in that era of sort of early 20th century, but the setting, which seems to be a sort of pyramid or Aztec temple of some description, seems to suggest something a bit different, perhaps something to do with the pyramids in Egypt, excavating mummies and things like that. Obviously Yaz seems to be doing some sort of work along those lines in the foreground of the shot, and there are some rather interesting symbols behind her on that wall. Could this episode be based around the discovery of Tutankhamun or one of the other pharaohs or whatever, queens or kings? Perhaps the character played by Kevin McNally is one of the famous explorers from that era, and it's a celebrity historical based around him and perhaps some other people as well. Then we have the Doctor and another person who I think it's fair to say probably is Yaz, although we can't be sure because we're only seeing them from behind. We have them flying through the alien landscape seen earlier in the shot with the Scissor Robots. They appear to be holding on to something, and that's where the two glowing parts are coming from, some sort of thing that they're riding on, like sort of maybe akin to those sausages that you get in swimming pools to hold on to when you're just learning how to swim. That's what this appears to be. There's been some speculation that this scene takes place right at the start of the series, perhaps as one of the very first scenes, and this is the adventure that we meet the Doctor and Yaz halfway through, prior to them meeting Dan, who is obviously not present in this sequence. And yeah, I think that sounds fairly plausible, although again, we can't be 100% sure. Now for what is perhaps the most interesting part of the trailer of all. The Doctor and Yaz in the TARDIS, with Yaz saying to the Doctor, "You're hiding something." This is surely a reference to the Timeless Child, which we haven't seen the Doctor tell Yaz about on screen. Of course, it's possible that it's not that and that it's something else, some other secret the Doctor is keeping from Yaz, and it's also possible that the Doctor has told Yaz about the Timeless Child thing, off-screen in the interim between the end of Revolution of the Daleks and the start of this series. But I think the most likely scenario is that she hasn't yet told Yaz about the fact that she is the Timeless Child and all this stuff that's preoccupying her. Obviously, we saw a bit of that in Series 12 with the Doctor keeping secrets from the fan and not telling them the full picture all the time. And that was taken a bit further in Revolution of the Daleks with that 10-month gap, which caused problems for pretty much every member of the fam, especially for Yaz, who doesn't feel she can rely on the Doctor as much anymore and felt a bit let down by the fact that she'd been left behind for 10 months and heard nothing. Could this rift between the two of them be developed even further in Series 13? And if the Doctor really is still keeping pretty massive secrets from her companions, might that cause problems for her and for them as the series goes on? "Get inside," yells the Doctor in the next shot, which really doesn't reveal too much at all. Obviously, I think it's pretty safe to assume that something fairly deadly is approaching the TARDIS, and that's about it. There's no clues as to where this takes place because of the way the shot is framed, which could in turn have offered some clues about, what this is or what story it's from. Possibly fairly early on in the series, because Dan still looks like a newbie, but beyond that, who knows. Then we see Dan in a tunnel in a shot which is strangely reminiscent of the chute tunnels from Into the Dalek. I think it's highly unlikely that Dan actually is inside a Dalek here, which begs the question, where is he and what is he doing? I have got absolutely no idea. Now this next one is quite interesting. It's the Doctor with a slingshot with another character. And at face value, it's not anything too exciting, but I think it's fairly safe to say that the character to the Doctor's left here is Mary Seacole, who obviously was a nurse in the Crimean War. She's been rumoured to be in the series. I think it's basically confirmed because the actress accidentally let slip on her CV that she's playing Mary Seacole in Doctor Who, which creates an interesting possibility here because I believe the Sontarans were also glimpsed at the filming for the Crimean War story on the battlefield. And as we all know, the Sontarans are particularly vulnerable at the back of their neck in their probic vent. So could the Doctor be aiming her slingshot at the probic vent? Could this even be inside some sort of Sontaran spaceship? The room is quite dark, but there is some sort of red, futuristic-y looking light in the background. Perhaps that's the new vibe for the Sontarans. Maybe their spaceships are going to be tinted red rather than purple as we saw in the RTD era. I think all that seems fairly likely based on what we know about the series from elsewhere, and I'm surprised that no one else has really been talking about it. Next, we get Vinder saying whoa. Not much else to report on this shot apart from that, to be honest. There must be something quite shocking there for him to say whoa. But it's not the inside of the TARDIS as you might expect, because he's not in the TARDIS. We can see that from the background behind him. So what could it possibly be? Who knows? Then we get Dan in someone's house. I think it's pretty safe to assume that this is his house, or at least his parents' house perhaps. Either way, I think it looks unusually old-fashioned to say that Dan comes from the 21st century. I think it's just the general sort of orangey hue to the whole thing and the sort of desaturated look to it as well, and the wallpaper in the background. It just looks like it's come out of Stranger Things or something like that. I'm not quite sure. It's definitely a nice shot. It just doesn't scream modern-day Liverpool at me, which is presumably where Dan is at this point in the story. We then have Yaz looking shocked with a couple of tears running down her face, and the Doctor Who marketing team have played this trick on us before, I will just point out. In the Series 12 trailer there was a shot from Spyfall Part 1, which in context was just after Yaz had been to the Kasavian dimension, where she had a tear running down her face, and everyone thought at the time, oh my god, someone's just died, or something really monumental has happened. And of course, that wasn't really the case. Obviously something traumatic has happened here. Perhaps Yaz has just witnessed someone get killed or sent back in time by a weeping angel. But whatever the case, I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't quite as bad as it looks. And finally we have the 13th Doctor looking very triumphant and giving the 12th Doctor's eyebrow game a run for its money. Are we back on the Crimean War battlefield as before? Could she be facing down a Sontaran here perhaps? I don't know. The possibilities are literally endless. Then the title card reading Doctor Who returns later this year, which does actually include a little Easter egg of sorts. If you look very closely at the bottom of this frame, in the middle, you will see the phrase /mystery. And if you add this to the official Doctor Who website URL, that is doctorwho.tv/mystery, you'll be taken to a mysterious, hidden webpage with the following message. Welcome to a mystery across space and time. Work together to solve the hidden clues and reveal a password below. #FindTheDoctor. It begins 13:13, 13. Then a password box below, which presumably when you put in the right password, gives you access to some sort of exclusive content. Now people have known about this since the trailer went up. The fans cottoned onto it fairly quickly. But surprisingly, no one's really got any further with working out what the password is or finding any clues elsewhere. There are some other people on YouTube who have posted theories about this, and obviously the hashtag #FindTheDoctor on Twitter as well is full of that sort of stuff if you want to go and check it out and see if you can crack the code and see what this is. But for now, /mystery very much still is a mystery. And last but not least, we get a tiny little segment right at the end of the trailer between the Doctor and Yaz. Again, this could take place before they meet Dan. It would be fair to assume, I think, because he's not present here. Unless the Doctor's already sent him on some sort of errand, or maybe he's waiting in the Tardis because he's got travel sick or something. The interesting thing here is that the pillar behind the Doctor in the first shot of this sequence matches the two pillars behind the Doctor, Yaz and Dan in the recently released promo image. Presumably that's quite an important location that recurs throughout the series, but beyond that we don't know where it is, of course. We don't know anything about it, really. I think it's fair to assume it's somewhere in the future as opposed to present day Earth, just because of all the symbols everywhere and markings and things, including on the floor actually, this is not from the trailer but from the promo image, a marking which bears a striking resemblance to the seal of Rassilon. Very, very interesting indeed, though of course that is, just like everything else in this video, pure speculation at the moment. So there we have it, every single shot from the Series 13 teaser trailer broken down and analysed. Some more than others because some contain more intriguing stuff than others, but I hope I still found something interesting to say about every single one. I think the most exciting thing about this trailer actually is what we don't see. You know, we see a lot of reactions of the Doctor looking at something or someone, or turning to face someone, or Dan looking at something in disbelief. Obviously we can fill in the gaps a little bit and say, you know, maybe that's a Sontaran, but for the most part we don't know, and that's really exciting that there's still all these surprises to come, still all these things that have been hidden from us and kept from us until broadcast. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. Please let me know your thoughts and theories on the Series 13 trailer in the comments section below. Do you agree with my theories or are there things I've missed? I'd love to hear what you have to say. Please do subscribe to the channel if you're new and like the video if you enjoyed it. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you soon for some more Doctor Who videos. Goodbye for now, guys.